Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to see about the economic survey of this financial year 2023-2024. Welcome to the channel. This is Aspirants Frequency. What economic survey? Before going to the chapters, I would like to answer some basic questions. What it is and why it is. Then who it publishes it, when it is published. Then how useful for the UPSC aspirants and other state public service aspirants who are preparing for the civil services. What it is the economic survey is the basic document which says about the status of the economy in the previous year, that is the financial year of 2023-2024, in the sense that is from the April 1st of 2023 to the March 31st of 2024. Why it is published? It's published as a document which says about the track record of the economy which is in the past year. Then who publishes it? It's published by the chief economic advisor, who is from the economic division of the Department of Economic Affairs, which is under the Ministry of Finance. Then when it is published, it's published prior to the budget, 1 or 2 days prior to the budget. Then how useful it is for the GS preparation, especially for the economics part in GS3. It's helpful in the mains answer writing, and it's also as well as the prelims questions, which covers the schemes, the data, and the trends which is asked in the many previous year questions. Not only for the economics GS general studies, but also in the GS1, GS2, it's also widely used. The flow of study here, there is 13 chapters in this economic survey document, and I'm going to cover each chapter in each video, which is less than around 10 to 15 minutes. Here I have read the document and I have compiled it in a single page, which consists of the concepts, the data, and the organizations which are in the topic discussed, and the key schemes which is discussed in this chapter. Let's get into this. Here I have classified in the first chapter based on the concepts which are discussed here, then the data or the organization or the reports which is mentioned in the report, then the schemes which are discussed in this first chapter. Coming to the concepts, the first one is the real GDP. We all know that GDP encounters the gross domestic product, that is the whole domestic product which is produced in the particular year in the domestic national. It consists of nominal and real GDP. Nominal GDP, which includes the inflation, real GDP, which subtracts the inflation rate compared to the base year. Then gross fixed cap. First of all, I would like to say that the concepts I have discussed here, it's like a revision material which is useful for the faster revision. I presume that the basic concepts are already known to you. Then the second one is the gross fixed capital formation. It is the total capital formation created by the government and the private. That it encounters for the gross fixed capital formation. Then the inflation, which is the rise in prices of goods and services, which includes for consumer price index and the wholesale price index. The consumer price index is also divided into the industrial workers and the combined workers. Industrial workers is used for the wages and other macroeconomic data. Then the combined CPI is used for the monetary terms. Then inflation targeting is the macroeconomic data which the RBI monetary policy committee fix, that is 4% plus or minus 2, that is the 4% is the ideal inflation rate which is to be there. Then the yield curve is discussed. The yield curve is the bond yield curve, that is the bond yield with bond prices, that is higher the bond prices, lower the bond yield. then which is inversely relational. Then the counter cyclical fiscal policy, that is when there is a normal curve, that is there is a development, there is a recession, then there is a depression, then during this the development period the government may took counter cyclical policy or the pro cyclical. There are two policies, there is pro cyclical fiscal policy and the counter cyclical fiscal policy. In pro cyclical, the government induces more growth in the terms of like reducing tax cuts, then more expenditure. But in the counter cyclical fiscal policy, that if presume there is a presume this is the flow in counter cyclical fiscal policy, that is during the growth the government takes more taxes to keep it as a buffer, then during recession the government cuts the taxes, then expenditure, there is more expenditure from the government side, so pushing more fiscal into the government, into the public hands. Then current account deficits, we all know, which includes the trade, services and the other transfer payments deficit in the balance of payment. Then tax buoyancy is at where the tax rate increases with GDP increase. So when there is a GDP increase, there should be a tax increase, otherwise then the tax buoyancy will be higher. For example, let me explain is this. Consider this as a ocean and this as a ship. When there is more weight in this, it tends to sink unless there is a required buoyant force. So likewise, if there is a more GDP but the required taxation is not collected, then the ship will sink. This is the same in case of tax buoyancy. Then non-debt capital receipts. Non-debt capital receipts or capital receipts, in the sense what are the returns from the capital spendings from the capital products. Non-debt capital receipts, or which includes the debt capital. Capital receipts basically includes the debt capital receipts and non-debt capital receipts. Non-debt capital receipts, or which are like the privatization, disinvestment. For example, if the government sells a PSU, then it gets income. That income, it doesn't creating any debt on the government side, so it is the non-debt capital receipt. Then effective capital expenditure. Effective capital expenditure is the capital expenditure of the government plus the revenue expenditure part, which given to the state as grants used for capital formation, which includes the effective capital expenditure. Then the basic concepts of revenue deficit, effective revenue deficit, and the primary deficit. Primary deficit, which is the fiscal deficit minus interest payments. The primary deficit concept is basically introduced to know the real value of the deficit, which subtracts the interest part. Then the effective revenue deficit is the revenue deficit made by the government except the capital formation. Like for example, in the revenue expenditure part of the government, certain part is given to the states for as grants, which is eventually made for the capital formation. So this capital formation, this part is minus capital is reduced from the revenue deficit minus capital formation grants to states. This forms the effective revenue deficit. Then the fiscal devolution, which is the tax amount collected is distributed to the states and the center, which is basically a bigger depend on the recommendation of the Finance Commission. This year it's formed the 15th Finance Commission, 16th Finance Commission. Each Finance Commission lasts for the 5 years, and it's appointed by the president, of course, according to Article 280. The fiscal devolution, which is vertical part, consists of center, between center and the state. Then the horizontal part is between each states, between the 28 states. The factors which are considered for between the horizontal devolution are like the demography, population, area, tax efforts, then like some 6 factors are mentioned here in the horizontal devolution. Then the government debt is bought from both the internal and the external debt. External debt are like from the foreign markets, then the World Bank, IMF, like external debt also is there by selling securities. Internal debt is from the RBI, then G6 through open market operations. Government is getting internal debt. It's even in the document it's mentioned that the internal debt is high, so there is a fiscal headroom for there is less dependability on the external market. Then the capital to risk weighted asset ratio. Capital to risk weighted asset ratio is the capital ratio of risks. For example, consider if you have the capital of 100 and there is a 10 rupees of risk, then you will be getting an ratio of 10. In the same sense, if you are getting 100 rupees and the whole amount is at a risk, then you will get a ratio of 1. So there is higher the ratio, there will be a good capital buffer. Then gross NPA, that is the non-performing assets. Non-performing assets are which are classified as which are not giving the proper return to the which are the assets, financial assets which are not giving the return to the banks. They are classified as substandard, doubtful, and the loss assets. Substandard assets are less for prolonged period of 12 months. They are not giving the poor return. That's the poor return. Doubtful assets are greater than 12 months. They are not giving returns, so they are considered as doubtful assets. This is less than 12 months. This is greater than 12 months. Then the lost assets are considered to be lost or completely no return are considered as the loss assets. These are some of the concepts which are discussed here. Then I have decoded some data organizational reports which is mentioned here. The World Economic Outlook, which is a report released by the IMF. Then the PMI value, that is the Purchasing Managers Index. It is actually the manufacturing output data from the supply side. So then gross value added, the gross value added data of agriculture, it accounts for 17.7%, the manufacturing 27%, and services. Then the fiscal deficit, which is in the current year it's 5.6, and the government aims to reduce by 4.5%. Here we also have that FRBM Act, which mentions that reducing the revenue deficit to zero, fiscal deficit to certain percentage, like that. Then the tax data, that is the direct taxes and indirect tax. And direct taxes it's around 55%, and the indirect taxes it's obviously it's GST, it's around 45% collected. Direct taxes includes the income taxes, then corporate taxes, then other taxes. Here it's the income tax which is placed the higher part in the direct taxes. It also gets to the mention. The interest payments rate, it is 30.4% of the revenue expenditure. Here we have seen that the revenue deficit, which includes the revenue expenditure part, which includes the interest payments, which takes the highest part in the revenue expenditure. The primary deficit, which is taken into account here, that the revenue deficit minus the interest payments, which gives the clearest value of the total deficit, which is made up apart from the interest payments. Then the financial stability report made by the RBI. Then the forex reserve of India currently is around $704 billion, which is approximately to take the 11 months import of the nation. Then the Jandan account holders, that is the bank account holders, are around 51.6 crore. Then the schemes which are discussed here are the Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is the self-reliant India. for reducing the dependency from other nations. Then the e-way system, which is the GST, for it's an indirect tax where the e-way system is introduced for more tax compliances and service delivery. The national monetization pipeline NMP, which is the disinvestment route of government for more enhancement of service delivery while it goes to the PPP model, but also it's a source of revenue for the government. The government earns around rupees 6 lakh crore within 2026 through this national monetization pipeline route. Then the annual survey of unincorporated sectors enterprises is under the Mosby Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation is underway. To the survey is to take into account the non-formal or informal sectors into the employment data. So the survey is underway. The national metadata structure unified data portal for all the macroeconomic data in single portal for effective service delivery. The data is used from some of the macroeconomic data like unemployment rate, GDP, GVA, then working population ratio, then CPI, the combined ratio. All these data are combined in a single portal, that is the national metadata structure unified data portal. Then some of the schemes like Ujwala, which is the LPG scheme, then Jandan bank account, then Awas, which is urban and rural are there for housing, then ADP aspirational district program and the aspirational block program. These are the schemes which are like creating some model districts, some around 112 districts which are developed with the saturation of basic amenities. Then the basic amenities, then by developing a model district, it can be manipulated or multiplied in the other districts. Then the vibrant village program in the border areas. Then Jal Jeevan mission for tap water connection in all household. It's the Jandan Trinity, which they have discussed here also. The Jandan account, then Aadhaar, then mobile. These three plays a major role in digitization of India, at the same time financial inclusion and also proper data structure. Then Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, it's a awareness scheme regarding the basic services and schemes announced here by the government. Then there's also, I would like to mention some of the key words which can be used in the intro and conclusions of their mains answers, especially like the supply chain disruptions, contact intensive sector services. Like contact intensive services are like the trade, transport, or some of the contact intensive services. Then fiscal consolidation is a term which is used like to reduce the debt and manage inflation both at the same time with economic growth. Fiscal consolidation, fiscal headroom is the space given to the government for more service expenditure without concerning the fiscal headroom. Then addressing regional imbalancing, this is the main cause in the fiscal devolution between the states. Like the higher income states like southern states, their tax collection are higher, but the return devolution was lower. This is the main issue which is spoken in the finance commission. Like the tax amounts of higher states are given to the less tax producing states for addressing their regional imbalances. Data driven policy and regional imbalancing, digitization of service delivery using the Jam Trinity and other schemes, farm gate to final consumer, input based approach to outcome based empowerment, policy making, which includes the 4 C's like conversation, collaboration, cooperation, coordination. Then employment generation through tripartite compact, which includes tripartite companies into the center state, academics and private organization. which is necessary for the employment generation. This is the one pager notes which I have taken in the for the first chapter of the state of economy. So I hope this will be useful, and I have also given some of the keywords which would be the reason which I have given here is like it's easy to recall when you are going to the exams before, and it's good to note these keywords which can be used here and there in the pressure of writing the 3 hours, the 20 and 20 questions. I hope it's easy and useful. Kindly waiting for your suggestions. See you on the next chapter.